Today I'm talking about how to sustain momentum. If anybody's ever push start a stick shift, we've been there. For that to happen, you need two things to jumpstart. First, you need a certain amount of force. Someone's got to get behind you and push. Is that right? And if you don't have anybody, that means you got to push yourself and jump in and start. That's not easy. Done that before. Once you have the force behind you, you got to move this vehicle, and you need a certain amount of velocity. A certain amount of velocity before it will kickstart. So I'm going to ask those that have taken physics. Mass times velocity equals what? Momentum. Momentum. Momentum is where everything begins. And when people are not able to begin something, what is lacking oftentimes is momentum. You need a certain amount of force behind you. Something has got to get this thing started. And it has to be a certain velocity, which means you got to continue to accelerate until you're able to get this started. And we can start sometimes, but if we don't have the force behind us, if we don't have enough drive, and you've got to continue beyond the point where you get tired. And if you're pushing, you can get tired of pushing. Is that right? You can get tired. But you need a certain amount of momentum in order for things to work. And I will submit that some things have not worked for you, not because it wasn't meant for you. You just didn't have enough momentum. You didn't generate enough momentum to get it off the ground. You started with good intentions. You had a strong drive, a strong desire. Your will was there, but you just didn't continue with the right momentum. Everything begins with momentum. And even a lack of momentum is when things become stagnant. When things are not moving, they become stagnant. If you've ever worn a cast, or anybody ever had to wear a cast, what you'll notice is that when you remove your cast, is that part has atrophied. Those muscles have atrophied. The joints have become stiff and weak. You no longer have the use that you desire of that part. Now, if you don't try and stimulate that part by creating momentum in that area, you will limit what you will do because of that weak part. You will not be able to do all that you want to do because you're always reminded of the weakness that you have. And that weakness is only there because you need to stimulate and get momentum in areas where you're weak. Even right now, there's some things that you could do, and you could do even greater if you applied the principles and components of momentum. Relationships can have no momentum. You can be married for 20, 30, 40 years and no momentum. And I know what you'll do this week. You'll do the same thing you did last week. Next year will be the same thing as you did this year, unless momentum kicks in. The Jordan River flows into the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee flows into the Dead Sea. And the Dead Sea doesn't flow anywhere. It has an inlet, but no outlet. And anything that enters the Dead Sea dies instantly because it cannot sustain life. If there's no momentum, you will not be able to sustain life. Your own ideas, your dreams, your ambitions will die. As soon as someone introduces something to you, if you don't have momentum in your life, you will kill the dream. You will kill the hope that you have because you will not listen because there's no momentum in your life. And momentum is an ever-changing current. That means you're constantly looking for ways to do things better, trying to do things smarter. Not just doing it because you've always done it that way, but you know the momentum by definition demands that things must change. In order for new things to happen, you have to get rid of what? The old things. But in order to get to the new, you have to be willing to let go of the old. That means not just grudgingly, but willing to get rid of the old so that new things can come. And that's a mark of change. That's a mark of promise, a mark of optimism. Make a note of this. Momentum is disruptive. Momentum is disruptive. It does not break the flow. It creates it. When you're around people with momentum, you're going to either be encouraged or discouraged. If there are people that have positive things going on in their life because there's momentum taking place, They may have lost weight or accomplished something that you're not able to accomplish. And what you'll tend to do if you do not have momentum is you'll make excuses why they can do it and why you can't. Well, it's easy for them because they have. You think of any advantage that you can see that they have that you don't have. And then you'll consider yourself disadvantaged because you do not have what someone else has. And you're blocking your own momentum. I've jogged before, and I found that if I've jogged and stopped jogging, I may as well just walk home. It's hard to get momentum started again when we stop. Momentum must be sustained. There are three components of sustaining momentum. Three components. The first thing in your program is you must clarify your vision. New triggers momentum. Make a note of that. New triggers momentum. The reason why we're not having momentum because we're not allowing something new to come. We're holding on to the old and we're trying to regenerate and trying to tweak and revive. And old thoughts, old ways of thinking, old ideas, old methods, old concepts must pass away. And momentum can be positive and negative. It depends on how you position yourself. It's like the adversity, the wind can be like the wind that takes a kite and make it rise. And the kite needs the adversity of the wind to push it so it can rise. But if you position yourself in the wrong direction, it can push you down. The same thing that comes to you can pick you up or can push you down. When 9/11 happened, it was a negative event, but it sparked momentum. A tragic loss of life, but what you notice is that people came together and heroes were formed. And things came out of them that they didn't even know that they had. The churches were filled. People began praying again. This nation came together and hope resounded. And we believed in a common cause and a common purpose. And out of that tragedy, positive momentum took place. So sometimes negative events in your life can spark positive momentum. You can count your days and realize that you don't have any more days to waste. And something tragic can happen and it can spark you onto even greater opportunities and even greater heights. It's about how do we see it? Do we see it through the eyes of momentum and opportunity or possibilities? Or do we see it as a problem, a stumbling block, or an obstacle? I think it was Gandhi that said that division brings suffering. Suffering brings unity, and unity success. In 1880, in May, Mount St. Helens erupted. And when it erupted, there was 200 square miles that was devastated. It sent poisonous gases throughout the air. And wildlife and marine life were destroyed. And they looked at that tragedy and think that it would never be the same again. But in less than a year, they were astounded how this whole landscape began to revive itself. And new marine life and new creatures. Ponds were developing where ponds were not there before. And now they have more elk and black bear and more trout and more than ever had before the eruption. And all they can do is look back and say it had to be a God. Make a note, negative circumstances are the fertile soil for a burst of positive momentum. New leadership can bring new direction. Sometimes a new program, a new paradigm. In your own life, I will submit that your body, your health, your relationship is screaming for momentum. You've gotten in a certain place and you need right now momentum to take place. You're stuck. You've been doing it that way and you'll keep doing it that way. And something needs to change. And the difficulty is sometimes people want to change things, but they don't know what to change. They know that something needs to change, but they don't know what, and they don't know how to apply the principles of progress. And that's a difficulty because sometimes we don't know how to ask for help. We don't want to receive the help that's offered to us. We just want to make it up and do it. Make it up as we go along and hope that somehow we make it up and something just starts to change. There are principles to progress. And no matter what you're doing, there's a principle that you need to follow in order to make it happen. And once you follow those principles, you find that progress is assured. But if you wanted to do it your way, and you want it to happen your way, and you don't want to listen to nobody, I know I'm talking to somebody here. Don't point. Don't point. I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to do it that way. Momentum is never triggered by tweaking something old. It is triggered by introducing something new. Because we don't want to make the full change. We want to tweak. We want to just change the color of something. Or just move the furniture around. That's not a true change. And I'm saying in your own life right now, rather than having something new, sparking something new, you might try to tweak what is old. And you will not get the result. You'll say, well, it didn't work for me. If all they had was an iPhone 4, how many people would buy iPhone 4s? They'll sell so many and then they won't sell anymore. But when the 4S comes out, what happens to the 4? Got to have the 4S. Because it's new and what? Improved. Now the truth is you never learned how to use the 4. You didn't. You didn't know how to use the 4. But the 4S is improved, so it's going to improve you in some way. If you believe that improving means that I get the benefit from what's improved. The new must be a noticeable change over the old. It can't just be a tweak. It has to be a noticeable change over the old. When evaluating a new option, ask yourself, is it significant? Is it more significant than what you had before? Now, if you can't afford an improvement, if you cannot afford something that's improved, evaluate your time. Unfund something else to be able to fund something that's better. If you don't have time, then give up something that you're doing so you have time to do something better. See, for momentum to happen, you got to be willing to give up your time. It's going to cost you something to have momentum happen. Something you're doing right now that may not be as productive as it should be willing to give that time up so that you can implement that toward the change that's necessary to create momentum. And once momentum happens, it's amazing how things just begin to change when new things happen. Even a significant improvement has a shelf life. Even when you improve something, even when it's significant, it won't last forever. Even a significant improvement has a shelf life. It was wonderful for the time, but you have to be willing to know that not everything lasts always. Be willing to make the change when necessary, so that new momentum can happen. Number 3, willingness to make changes. Not only do things have to be new and improved, but they have to continue to be improving. Improving. That means systematic evaluations must take place. Evaluating why do you do what you do. You get up every morning and you do certain things. Why? Have you become predictable? Are you stagnant? Have you become weak? Are you able to do the things you really want to do? And when you retire, I've heard that, now I haven't retired yet, I don't think I ever will, but what happens a lot of times, we tend to lose the momentum that we had when we were working. We had things that we would do. There was rituals. There's things you did weekly and consistently. And then we retire and we don't fill that with new rituals and new opportunities to improve and grow. And we don't evaluate where we are. And when you don't evaluate things, they begin to decline over time. There should be no one and nothing that is off limits. Evaluate everything and everybody. Now that's going to hurt feelings. Because you're just going to ask, maybe we should change this. And some people are very fixed in why they do it that way. It's personal. And because we didn't evaluate ourselves and find ways to improve, we're not able to serve the people that come to us. Because we should be constantly getting better and better and better. Is that right? I had eczema. You probably saw me there and I talked about that recently. But what I found, some positive things happen with eczema. I had to go through a lot of itching, a lot of that. Remember I said I wanted the symptoms because the symptoms were going to let me know how to find positive improvements. So I had to go through a process of discovering how to become healthy. I had to learn about eczema and how it works and what triggers it. And I started finding out there's a lot of triggers and things that I eat that were triggering it. And one of the things that I eat that I love, I had to give up, and that was eggs. Yes. First bacon. Walter, no eggs. I would eat eggs and suddenly a reaction. I'm itching and going through that, and I gave up the eggs. And after 1 week of giving them up, my joint pain went away. There's something. And I'm telling you, talking about a guy who would eat a dozen sometimes a day. That's a lot of joint pain. My whole point, sometimes when we're in a rut, we're not aware that it's working against us. We do the same thing, we eat the same thing, and the change that we need sometimes can free us, because the things that we're doing may be holding us back and holding back progress. You personally should find momentum and a reason to change things at least 3 to 4 times a year. At least 3 to 4 times a year, there should be significant change happens in your life. Find some things that you can significantly change at least 3 to 4 times a year. I'm not talking about spouses, nothing like that, okay? So that's like, but something that allows you to improve a better quality of life. Joining a peer group and learning and being around people that have a like mind. Starting that business or an opportunity to start doing something that you never thought you'd do before. You may want to run marathons or somehow some fitness level that you may want to achieve. But it happens when we commit to it. Momentum has to take place. Either you're moving or you're stagnant. You can't have both. And if momentum is happening, you're going to be seeing things that's constantly being renewed. And you're seeing things get better. Flowers are blooming. New life. New opportunities. New people. Your countenance is changing. Because we're able to let go of the old and embrace the new.